Folks, I'm turning it on. We're on the air. We're on the air. Good evening. Before we begin tonight's meeting, I'd like to take a moment to recognize the sadness and confusion other cities are dealing with, and on behalf of this body and our community, send a message of our love and concern. Evil has imposed itself in the most horrific ways in our nation recently. Las Vegas, New York, and just this past Sunday in Sutherland, Texas, where people were gunned down while worshiping in their church. Would you please join me in a moment of silence and reflection, honoring the precious victims of these tragedies and their families. Thank you. As we begin our meeting tonight, if you'd like to have an agenda to follow along with us, they're on the table just to the right of the doors outside, and if you're joining us remotely, you may get an agenda at Athens-Clarke If you have a cell phone, please turn it off or to silent. There are 4 opportunities for citizen input tonight. Our consent agenda, items 1 through 10, old and new business, items 11 through 18, and recommendations from our Planning Commission, which are items 19 through 21. There'll be one final opportunity at the end of our meeting when we've finished our business for any item that's not on tonight's agenda. Rules of the Commission allow citizens 3 minutes for comments. The timer's on Ms. Spratlin's desk. It will turn, you have 3 minutes. It will turn yellow when you've got 30 seconds left, so please try to have your comments finished so I won't need to interrupt you. And if you brought handouts you'd like to share, if you'll give them to Mr. Berryman, he will share those with us. And I was going to recognize somebody, but I don't see him here tonight, so I'll hold off on that. Ms. Bratton, would you call the roll, please?
Dickerson. Here. Sims. Here. Link. Here. Wright. Present. Bailey. Present. Eastman. Dale. Here. Harris. Present. Gertz. Here. Handy. Here.
Okay. Entertain a motion for the approval of minutes of Tuesday, October 3rd, October 17th, and Monday, October 23rd.
So moved.
Second.
Have motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Do we have any written communications, Ms. Bratlin? Okay. And this is the time in which we will receive our first citizen input, and it will be on the consent agenda items, which are 1 through 10. So if anyone would like to speak to one of those items, please come to the podium, give us your name and address, and which item you're speaking to. Okay, seeing none, we'll come behind the rail. Do I have a motion? Would anyone like to take?
Ordinances.
You have one ordinance. Thank you.
Okay. An ordinance to amend the Code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia with respect to parking restrictions on Weymanda Circle and for other purposes.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I move the adoption of the consent agenda.
Have motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
I think everybody said aye. And now we'll move to our second part of our meeting for citizen input. And this is on our old and new business, which are items 11 through 18. Oh, I'm sorry, I've gone to the wrong one. It is old and new business 11 to 18, but we're not to planning meetings yet. Are you coming up here for 11
No,
through
ma'am.
I saw you and that confused me. Okay.
You're going to get to see me twice tonight.
Okay.
I appreciate it. My name is Jim Warnes. My address is 244 East Washington Street, and I'm here to speak on behalf of item number 14, which is the initiation of the roadway abandonment process for Elbert Street. The Quick Trip has submitted revised drawings for both the vehicular access with Old Winterville Road and the Rails to Trails connection with the relocated plaza in consideration of the discussions that they had with the Rails to Trails Committee. Those plans were reviewed by staff who recommended approval of the rezone, and that same approval was given by the Planning Commission last Thursday night. So the reason why I'm here is I know that a lot of you may not realize that we're that far along in the process, but staff had 4 recommendations, 4 conditions, all of which are acceptable to Quick Trip, that the mayor and commission approve the transfer of Elbert Street right-of-way prior to the approval of the plan development, which is why I'm speaking tonight, because I want to see that that gets initiated so that next month, when we have the second reading, and then have the plan development, that it all goes in sequence. They had a couple of technical things they wanted with the site plan. Those have been taken care of. They wanted the sidewalk along on the realigned Old Winterville Road to be a minimum of 8 feet. Quick trips in conjunction with that, that's no problem. And then the developer must coordinate the improvements associated with Firefly connection with the appropriate Athens-Clarke County staff. As I said, they've been in constant conversation about that, and that's not an issue. So I just am asking that we approve the abandonment of the Elbert Street so that we can pull all the rest of this together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Warrens. Anyone else wish to speak to items 11 through 18?
Good evening, Madam Mayor. I just quickly wanted to speak on the agenda item under old business. My name is Michael Smith at 147 Bryan Street. The legislative items the commission is going to present to the state delegation. And so the idea here is I believe before every state session, the elected representatives, whether they're state representatives or senators from particular counties, gather with the mayor and commission, and they try to find consensus on issues that the state delegation may move forward with lobbying for in the state capitol. And we had just noticed that the idea about local control for public monuments, which is connected to the Confederate Memorial or Monument on Broad Street here in Athens-Clarke County. I am speaking in support of the AADM on this, and the idea here is we believe it's very important that we reach consensus that they go to the state capitol and try to get local control of public monuments. But we also feel like that it's necessary that there's one or two options for each county, so we won't be in a position where 41 counties are for local control and 200 aren't. It might be a good idea to have some sort of opt-in or opt-out, as well as some sort of expedited process to where a county can move forward slowly, or if there's been lots of debate and lots of community discussion and there's already a lot of consensus, then they can move forward in an expedited process. So, you know, the idea is consensus for our state delegation to move forward, then perhaps a provision to opt in or out at the county level, and also for an expedited process. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Yeah.
Good day, everyone. My name is Noah D. Johnson, 651 Lakeland Drive. I'm here representing Athens Anti-Discrimination Movement. And basically, I want to speak to item 17 and request also that you guys take this to the state legislation, get this on the item for 2018 consideration for local control. You know, I agree with what Mr. Smith said, having each community to be able to make their own decision to opt in or opt out, to be able to make decisions about their monuments. And I didn't bring 50 to 100 people here today to try to pressure you guys into this. I feel like last time we came and we brought over a dozen people to try to represent the consensus of over hundreds of people in the community to have had discussions about this. And it's a chance for us to basically put something there that represents our community, or it's a chance to create a more safe environment. I don't want to go and repeat everything that everybody said that was here. The video is available online, but I hope that we have appealed to you guys to know that this is something that your community does want and do want you to move on, speak on, and hope that you guys represent us well. And outside of that also, well, I guess that's all I can address right now.
Thank you,
you,
Mr.
and please
Johnson.
consider that.
Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we'll come behind the rail, and we will start our deliberation with item number 11. This is College Avenue and Willow Street and Cleveland Avenue. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd requested that this be removed from the consent agenda at our agenda-setting meeting. just in case there was any input that members of the public in close proximity to there, which is in my district, would like to provide, and put it out on the neighborhood listserv, and all the response was positive. I think people recognize that the sight lines there are challenging. And I'll say that everybody who kind of mentioned the prospect of a roundabout was interested in the county pursuing that analysis, as is mentioned in the agenda report. So I'm going to make a motion for approval.
Second.
Would you read the ordinance, Mr. Berryman, please?
An ordinance to amend the code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia with respect to all-way stop control at the intersection of College Avenue and Willow Street, Cleveland Avenue, and for other purposes.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We will now move to item number 12, which is the Land Conservation Loan and Principal Forgiveness, project number, SPLOST project number 28. Anyone want to make any comments?
I move that we approve it.
Have motion for approval?
I second it.
Motion second. Any discussion? Yes, sir.
An ordinance to amend the FY 2018 annual operating and capital budget for Athens-Clarke County so as to provide grant and loan funding through the Georgia Department of Resources Land Conservation Program for acquisition of property for the Green Space Program and for other purposes.
Thank you. Did we vote?
Motion is second.
Okay, have motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we've got several of us running the meeting tonight, so thank y'all for your help. Item number 13 is Biosolids hauling and disposal. Would anybody like to deal with that
Yes, ma'am, I
item?
believe that came out of the Legal Review Committee.
Yes, sir.
Who would think that septage would take so much time to figure out, but,
Oh, I would.
so, we looked at many different alternatives about septage pricing and rules, and basically, Blaine, jump in any moment here.
I don't think this is that item.
Oh, this is the septage?
No, it's biosolids.
Never mind.
That-
It's
I'm
similar.
so glad to see you stepping on your tongue that sometimes.
Who, me?
He always lets us know when the rest of us do. Thank you, Mr.
Y'all,
Smith.
they've
Would
done a
you
lot of work
explain
on
this one
that,
for
but I
us?
think that's
Yeah.
in the next
And
item.
when you
Yeah.
look up and you see Blaine going,
My wife's done a lot.
This is actually where we are contracting to haul some of these biosolids out of the county. So this is a little bit different. But anybody need any clarification on that?
I'll speak to it. I'm happy to see that this is a short-term contract to continue that hauling, and that our public utilities is exploring alternatives for these biosolids. Currently, we haul the leftover doo-doo from the wastewater treatment plant across the county for disposal in the landfill, and there are possibly more ecological alternatives to dealing with that material, and also eliminating some of the costs for hauling that stuff. So I'm glad to see that we're pursuing this, and I look forward to seeing what staff comes up with.
Ms. Wright?
I make a motion that we approve option 1A, B, C.
I'll
Have a motion-
second.
Have motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we're glad to get that one past us. Item number 14 is Tweedell Properties Incorporated and RTSH Holdings, and this is the initiation of roadway abandonment process for Elbert Street, and this is what Mr. Warrens was speaking to. Anyone wish to deal with this issue?
It's just, this is in my district, and it's just a matter, this is the first reading of this, because we have to go through a second preliminary, a second reading at our next month's meeting in order to make this come to fruition. Hopefully, we will also be able to follow through with what Mr. Warren was mentioning, how we can so we can keep things in sync, so that we can get this possible realignment of that street. For the past 25 years, I've been trying to get it done, so we may actually get it done in this process right now. At least this is a start for that.
Mr. Herod?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, as Commissioner Sims mentioned, that this is really, a lot of this has to do with the Quick Trip redevelopment, and I'm very much in favor of that particular project. I think it's a good project, and particularly after Quick Trip folks met with the Rails to Trails Committee, I think it's an even better project than it was beforehand. So, abandonment of part of this road is going to be necessary for that project to move forward, but seem to recall that at our agenda setting meeting, there was some discussion about not abandoning more than we absolutely necessarily have to. Do I remember that conversation?
We would abandon the road, and then the second part would be the negotiation with Quick Trip over probably a property swap for the right-of-way. But the entire road would be, that means it can't be a public road anymore.
Okay, my understanding, maybe I misunderstood, but that we would need to give up some of it for them to be able to do their project, but that there were parts of it that we might still want to maintain in case we wanted to do some activities related to the Firefly Trail.
Yeah.
And I think the question was, where exactly do we draw the line between what we would have to give up for the project to happen? And as I said, I'm all in favor of the project, but not give up all of it in case we decided we needed some of that for an interface with the Firefly Trail at some point in the future, given that the Firefly Trail is a transportation corridor.
But we can certainly work with them to see what's the minimum they need to satisfy their purposes.
Okay.
I haven't been a part of that discussion, so I can't say whether they've indicated they need all of it or just some of it, but we'll certainly pursue that if that's the wish of the
That would be
commission.
my preference because, as I said, I understand that we will need to abandon some of it because otherwise their project won't work, and I want their project to work, but there may be some things down the road that we may want to retain control over, at least a little bit of that. The Quick Trip doesn't need, but we may want to do something with relation to the Firefly Trail at some point that I don't quite know yet what that might be, but I would hate to lose control over it.
Bill, may I ask you a question? Maybe I misunderstood, but my understanding was if we abandon the road, it doesn't mean that we've given up ownership of it. We've just taken it away as a public street. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So we still have ownership and still have that negotiating right.
It's a two-step process.
But we'll let other people see, and maybe I'll reformulate my question more cogently.
Mr. Neesmith, and then
The two-step process is to negotiate what the value of this abandonment is, and the compensation for that is what they're giving us. So I think we'll find, I've done some research since we talked, Andy. It's pretty good. I do want to add one other thing, though, and that there is our granite curbs, which are quite valuable for the fact that they're granite. And I'd like for us to consider reserving the right to remove and reuse those curbs as part of this abandonment. We may be able to use them in the Firefly Trail or as landscaping in that area. So just a simple little thing. They don't need them. We might use them.
And again, I'll get to Melissa. As I understand it, we're not doing anything that would prohibit any of that tonight by just starting this process, correct?
That's correct. In fact, before the road's abandoned, the government may well want to pull those granite curbs and store them somewhere.
Yeah, good. Ms. Link?
Yeah, I have some similar concerns about, the possibility of some portions of the property that is this street being used for public use, still used for public use. So I understand that there is another step in the negotiations that would entail some compensation as well, and maybe a property swap, because there is part of the project that is kind of a vast expanse of empty, unused land that could be of really good use for a Firefly Gateway. So this is just the initial step in giving up the functioning of the property as a street, and then there's further negotiation.
That's correct.
So y'all will see the plan next month. I think that's the intent. And I get the sense that they will need most, if not all, of that property for access grading and landscaping. But you'll see the plan, you'll be able to ask questions, and we'll give you what we see, and you obviously take your comments.
Anybody else? Did we have a motion?
I'll make the motion that the mayor and commission authorize the initiation of the process of abandoning public right-of-way on Elbert Street as shown in diagram, attachment A.
Thank you, Ms. Sim. Do we have a second? Motion is second.
Yeah,
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question, because if I'm remembering that there's new drawings besides the ones that's in the packet, that might give a little more clarity as to
how much of this is needed? Can we get that sent out to us so that we can
That's what Blaine was just saying, that we would.
But I meant,
Get a better understanding.
like after this vote, yeah, sooner rather than later, so that we can start having a visual of that amount as it's going forward, so that we can be getting questions answered. Because I agree with what Commissioner Harrod was saying, to allow it to go through, but also to retain what they don't need type thing.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay.
We can share that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and the number 15 is Athens-Clarke County Library improvements. And this is something we've already voted, and this is just a contract award. Any,
Motion for approval, Madam Mayor.
Second.
have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And we have the final action, the final under our old business is the execution of the memorandum of understanding with Mobilitie. Do I have a motion or discussion?
I'll discuss first. I think the conversations that we've had with Mobilitie and with government, GMA and so forth have been incredibly productive, and we have a much better view of what this is about, which as much as anything, it is of us asserting our local control over these right-of-way issues for small cell towers. GMA has done a very good job of crafting this contract, this model contract. Our staff has reviewed it. I was dubious at first, and now that I understand more about where we're going with this, I get it. So I'll just go ahead and make a motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? And before we vote, I'll tell y'all that I have signed a letter through the National Conference of Mayors asking Congress to continue the local representation on the broadband committee that's being discussed, that's discussing this whole issue of access.
May I add something, Madam Mayor? In one of our issues for our local delegation, this is part of it, where we're asking them not to seize control from local government when it comes to granting right-of-ways or overruling our contracts and ordinances with regards to small cell tower right-of-ways. So we're going to have to stay on top of this.
And this is even a broader question with at the national level, but what we're asking is that they keep local governments involved in it. So we have been, and I think there's some discussion. We've had some people rotate off of not replacing them, so I signed on to that letter on our behalf. So,
Thank you.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we will move on now to item number 17, which we need a suspension of, no, 17 is legislative delegation, I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I wanted to thank Commissioner Neesmith, I think, who took what we started out with and used some of the feedback and information he'd gained from his trip for the ACCG. And I would like to make a motion that we approve what's on pages 125, 126, and 127. The part that I started off with, which was more of a snapshot, is in there, but I didn't want to capture that because it included the bar hour changes, and I would rather go forward with the other topics as they're explained in those pages.
In fact, I had presented the pages that she cited as a commission-defined option instead of the last page, which was I consider our original draft, items 1 through 9. So I considered the first three pages as a commission-defined option.
Oh, I just.
So if you'll accept that as her motion, I'll second it.
That was my motion. Yeah, exactly. That's what I meant to say. Yeah.
So we have a motion and a second. Does everybody understand?
And I did want to say that if the public, with your feedback, if you would be reading through these and as much support as you can give us as we go forward with these to the state level, it's appreciated.
Ms. Link.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that, this is, we can make these requests to our state delegation, but it's also up to the citizens of this community to work on them as well to see to it that these items move forward, and that includes local control of our monuments. And there's also a provision in there asking for more leeway in affordable housing mechanisms. And, I know we talk about that a lot in this community, and some of what we can do as far as encouraging new affordable housing is limited by state laws. So I hope that the people of this county will speak up and reach out to our state representatives on these items.
Madam Mayor, may I say
Yes.
one more thing? Item A2, which is November local elections, which unified governments are required to have local elections in May. And unlike the non-unified governments, and we're asking them to move them to November like everyone else. And there's an elephant in the room, and that is that some of the unified governments want them in May to suppress votes. And shame on them.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Madam Mayor, I move for suspension of rules.
Thank you, Mr. Sims. Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we will now move to item number 18, which is our nominating committee report. And I had it here on the desk, and you got another copy, Jean? Thank you, ma'am.
I'll make a motion to approve the list.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And so I would like to announce who these new members of some of our boards and authorities are. The Athens-Clarke County Industrial Development Authority is Robert Sink to a 2-year term, which will expire 12/31 of 19. ACC Library Board, we have 3 appointments. Erin Boydston, 5-year term expiring 12/31/22. Courtney Brown, a 5-year term expiring 12/31/22. And Stephanie Hall, a 5-year term expiring 12/31/22. And on the Board of Health, Tianya Lawrence, a 6-year term expiring 12/31 of 23, and she is a family nurse practitioner and that's, we have to have a health care person on that committee. Division of Family and Children's Services, Shiloh Wilson, partial term expiring 6/30 of 19, and Historic Preservation Commission, Jeanette Parker, a partial term expiring 6/30/19. And I would like to congratulate and thank these citizens that are willing to give their time and energy and talent to us, and also thank the numbers of people that made applications that didn't get selected this time. But please keep doing it, because we need the help of our citizens. We couldn't do this without you. Thank you. Ms. Breton, let me give this back to you. Thank you. Okay, we're about to move to our Planning Commission items, but before we do that, there's a room full of young people here, and I see life out there. Is this your Chesson Community Group?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you guys, I don't want to embarrass you, would you stand up and let us recognize you? Thank you, guys. And I will tell you, we're not always quite as silly as we are tonight, so please come back and visit with us often. So.
Speak for yourself. Yeah, it's not saying we are.
Yes, some of us are always silly. So now we're going to move to our planning items, and under planning, public input is a little bit different. There are opportunities for 10-minute segments for people who have signed up for those on planning items, and we deal with those one item at a time. So we have public input, then we discuss and vote, and then we go to the next item. So we'll start out with item number 19, which is, excuse me just a minute, let me get, request from Jim Warrens for Athens Banjo Properties LLC for rezoning to, I'm not going to go through all of what it's for, but the proposed use is commercial. Mr. Berryman will probably cover all those meets and bounds in the reading of the ordinance. Would you go ahead and read that so we don't mess it up?
There are 2 for this item. The first is an ordinance to amend the Code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, with respect to amending the official future development map of Athens-Clarke County by changing the designation of 2 parcels of land comprising approximately 1.20 acres. The first parcel located at 410 Oak Street from Main Street Business to Carter Business, from the second parcel located at 448 Georgia Drive from neighborhood mixed use to corridor business. The second is an ordinance to amend the Code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, with respect to rezoning 2 parcels of land comprising approximately 1.20 acres. The first parcel located at 410 Oak Street from CGA, Commercial General Airport Overlay, to CGA, Commercial General with Conditions Airport Overlay. And the second parcel located at 448 Georgia Drive from RM2A, Mixed Density Residential Airport Overlay, to CGA, Commercial General with Conditions Airport Overlay, and for other purposes.
Thank you, Mr. Berryman. Ms. Wright, this is in your district. Would you like? Oh, we got to have, I'm sorry, public input. Get to see Mr. Warrens again.
Thank you, ma'am. Again, my name is Jim Warrens, and my address is 244 East Washington Street. As many of you are aware, Enterprise Car Rental, which is located further in toward town from this location, has just been busting out at the seams. There have been a lot of complaints about their inventory being parked all up in the neighborhood because there's just not enough room on their lot. They have a contract to lease this combined parcel, but of course, it's contingent upon the combined parcel being rezoned CG with conditions. The 4 conditions are a plat combining the 2 subject parcels be recorded. That plat has been done. It's ready for submittal for approval through the normal process. The additional Oak Street right-of-way shall be conveyed to GDOT for street frontage sidewalk. GDOT has submitted plans to the applicant that show both the realignment of Oconee Street as well as a taking of a part of the frontage of Oak Street. This is done in conjunction with what's going on out at the bypass. It's all part of the same project. We're negotiating with them about putting in the sidewalk and how all of that's going to configure. An undisturbed 20-foot vegetative buffer maintained along Oconee Street. The property that's identified as 448 Georgia Drive actually fronts on Oconee Street because Georgia Drive was abandoned back in the 70s and then was conveyed out to the 2 separate properties on either side. And by combining this will combine Georgia Drive into the total parcel, just the end part of it that's been abandoned, not the whole street. And then a maximum building height on the existing parcel at 448 Georgia Drive at 30 feet. Well, because it's going CG, any residential structure that would be put up there is going to have to come back in front of this group for a special use or for a PD. So long story short is the applicant is in full agreement with all of these conditions. If this is approved, it helps improve the corridor. Enterprise plans on making this what they call a Class A store. Right now, as you're around the corner, you just got that white building sitting out there in an expanse of asphalt. All of that will change. And this will just be an improvement for Athens-Clarke County, and we ask that you pass it.
Thank you, Mr. Warrens. Anyone else wish to speak to this item?
Good evening. Excuse my voice is about gone since Friday. Not because of game, because I had cold. But Gary Armour, 22 Sunny Hills Drive. If some of you know, native Athenian, been here 4th generation. My great-grandparents, my grandparents, and my mother are literally buried in the backside of the cemetery. And on a side note, I'm sitting here looking at it, and I just said, well, for the sake of letting you know, how did he ever in the world come up with Athens Banjo Properties? That goes back to my great-grandfather, who my father now has the quote banjo that he made and he played, and it still got tobacco stains on it. So hopefully one day, I'm not looking for it, I want my dad to live forever, but if that's the reality, that one day I'll inherit that banjo. So that Athens banjo is actually in honor of my great-grandfather who's buried along with my mom up on the hill. But that being said, I inherited the lease with Enterprise when I bought the property, and then I knew they were looking for other places, and then this property came to me and actually asked me if I was interested, knowing that I had bought some other properties down the street. And like one person said, what does this have to do with what you're wanting to do with the other property? In my mind, it had everything to do with it, just like Jim mentioned about changing the whole gateway to Athens, that corridor. Because in essence, after I bought it, and I thought to myself, boy, that was, quintessential element is somebody actually called me and wanted to rent that building as a gun and pawn shop, which to me would be the worst nightmare on what we don't want down that corridor. But that being said, thank you for your time. Look forward to bringing other projects to you, and I hope that this is the first one of many. Thank you.
Before you leave, I want to ask you something. Can you play the banjo?
No, ma'am.
I
would
think
love
your dad
to.
should make that a condition of your inheritance.
But my father did say that not only did he play it and plowed a mule, and long story short, he said, my father to this day says, you're not playing a banjo when they're strumming it. You have to pick it like your great-grandfather did.
Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else in the public wish to talk to us about this? Okay, we'll come behind the rail, and this is in Ms. Wright's district.
Yeah, I concur with staff recommendations and planning's recommendation. This is a great improvement for the site. I have had issues with dumping and different unsightly nuisance things with the dead end of Georgia Street, so I'm looking forward to that opening up, as well as the other improvements. Even though there's already sidewalk on Oconee Street, because it being up the hill and back down, the typical foot traffic is hugging that curb on Oak right there. So I'm looking forward to that safety improvement, which likely is going to happen sooner with this before the Oconee Loop 10 interchange happens. So I'll make a motion that we approve it.
We have two.
Oh, I'm sorry. Make a motion that we
it's
approve
gotta be
the
the
future development
future
map.
development map. Yeah.
Second.
Have a motion second to amend the future zoning map. Have any
Motion.
objections? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
And
Now, you
I'll
have
make a
another
motion that we approve the rezoning with conditions.
Second.
Have a motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thank you. We'll move on to item number 20. And I'll just warn y'all, we're going to have 5 different votes on this one. Just looking to see, do we have any ordinances? Yeah, yeah. Would you go ahead and read the ordinances, Mr. Berryman, for us, please?
An ordinance to amend the code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia with respect to special use approval in the RS-25 single-family residential district on the approximate 4.84 acre parcel of land. I'm sorry, I read the wrong one. Are we doing?
Jerry.
I was right, okay, I'm sorry. Got in front of myself. On the 4.84 acre parcel of land located at 780 Timothy Road and for other purposes. I apologize.
It's tonight, April 1st, and we just missed the calendar, because I think we're all acting like it is. Okay. So we have the 10-minute sections on planning items, and we did have someone that signed up for the 10 minutes tonight, Josh Coons.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Josh Coons. I reside at 205 Clover Street here in Athens, and our firm has been assisting the Unitarian Fellowship with the planning of their expansion project. We're in front of you tonight to request a special use permit. However, as you are aware, the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Athens is an existing use that has been in place for over 25 years. The fellowship was built in 1992 on a parcel of land that at the time they thought would be big enough for them to expand in the future. Unfortunately, the zoning ordinances have changed over this time, and these changes have resulted in variance requests relative to their current expansion plans. Just getting a little bit mixed up. Rarely do I sign up for the 10 minutes, so you've given me a little
That's all
more
right,
time
Josh,
than I have.
Josh, we're all doing it tonight.
All right,
so.
thank you. There are 4 waiver requests. The first 2, front yard parking and a reduction to the road frontage buffer, essentially formalize existing conditions, despite having a Timothy Road address. The parcel's front yard, relative to current planning standards, is actually facing Rambling Road, which is where the existing parking lot is. To be clear, the project is proposing to add 5 spaces in the reconfiguration of this existing parking lot. This does add to the increase in the road frontage buffer encroachment, while also an existing condition relative to the current zoning standards is the result of these 5 additional spaces being added. This does bring us to the 3rd variance request, which is for an increase in lot coverage. This is ultimately required to accommodate the building expansion as well as the existing and potential future parking needs. As you're aware, the coverage requirement not only protects the character of a zone, but ultimately limits the stormwater impact associated with development. And I would like to sort of focus on the latter, if I could. The original conditional use site plan, though, just to recap, was approved in 1989. Construction plans submitted and approved for permit in 1991 showed 59 spaces at that time. 11 additional spaces were added and permitted after the fact in 2012, which sort of brings us to our existing site coverage, which is approximately 21%. Our waiver request is to increase the maximum lot coverage from 25% to 30% to accommodate not only the building expansion, but the parking needs, as earlier noted. Given concerns about the impact of stormwater downstream from the site, we have reviewed in detail the existing conditions of the drainage basin in which the fellowship is situated. We found that the fellowship property represents about 15% of that overall basin. The coverage increase request from 25% to 30% represents less than 1% of that drainage area. Regardless, though, the fellowship recognizes the consequences of even minimal impact and has chosen to act accordingly. For the existing parking lot, the fellowship will install a new curb inlet that will effectively catch and convey the existing parking lot water to the existing stormwater basin. If you recall, there was somebody who initially was opposed to this project, and that was one of the problems. And by meeting with him, working through those concerns, we could easily take care of that. We're also adding a water quality measure that will be installed along the flow path, and that'll allow us to meet current water quality requirements. And as a result, the existing parking lot will be brought into full compliance with the current Athens-Clarke County Stormwater Management Ordinance as part of the renovation and reconfiguration. For the proposed parking lot, the master plan process that we went through with the fellowship identified the desired number of cars for this facility to be approximately 120 to 125 spaces. This would not only meet existing demand, but also provide approximately 20 additional spaces for future parking if needed. The church is regularly parking around 90 to 100 cars. The overflow from the 70 spaces in the existing lot ultimately ends up along the sides of Rambling Road, which creates a congested and somewhat unsafe situation during high attendance services or events. Our planning process reviewed several options for the location of the new parking lot, and the decision to locate off of Cheatham Road ultimately was made by the fellowship to minimize impact. Given the sensitive downstream conditions, we reviewed stormwater options with the church. Standard pavement with typical surface detention ultimately resulted in extensive tree loss and too much disturbance relative to the fellowship's internal expectations. Alternatively, we proposed a parking lot that would promote infiltration through the use of porous pavement and integrates the stormwater management into a subsurface reservoir. Some water, it will actually pond on the surface, which would be a design feature. It'll actually outfall via a number of slots in the curb and distribute design storms to many areas within the landscape and avoid a single concentrated outfall. This will limit the amount of disturbance not only associated with the parking lot and the grading related thereto, but just decreases the total area of disturbance on the site and within its footprint. It promotes a low-impact strategy that allows the natural landscape to be a part of the overall stormwater management goals. So in summary of this coverage request increase, we feel like a low-impact design for the parking lot expansion, while it will recover an increase in coverage, will not adversely affect the stormwater within the basin and will not adversely affect the character of the area given its limited disturbance and low-profile location tucked into the woods below the Timothy Road right-of-way. The fourth waiver request is the sidewalk waiver. And honestly, it is a hard waiver to request. I think I speak for everyone at the fellowship when I say that generally speaking, we support the sidewalk initiative and we would willingly participate. However, at this specific location, we are facing challenging existing site conditions, including minimal road shoulder adjacent to the road itself and a steep slope from that shoulder to the edge of the right-of-way. Prior to requesting the variance, we reviewed multiple options with Athens-Clarke County. We reviewed locating the sidewalk at the elevation of the road at different locations relative to road offset. All of these options required extensive earthwork, retaining walls, fall protection railings, and even in some relocation of the guardrail itself. As an alternate, we reviewed moving the sidewalk from the road elevation down to the edge of the right-of-way where it would be lower, closer to grade. Even at this location, constructing the sidewalk requires earthwork, wall construction, tree removal, and relocation of existing utilities. In many ways, relative to an effort of this magnitude, this is a cost issue. We would be happy to build a typical sidewalk on grade at this location, which should cost for its length around $30,000. However, with all the other requirements to get the sidewalk on grade at this location, it could cost as much as $250,000. As a final effort relative to cost and to make the sidewalk potentially cost-effective, we proposed moving portions of the sidewalk into the fellowship property itself, where the sidewalk could be built mostly on grade. However, upon review of this option, we were informed that Athens-Clarke County's current preference is to avoid easements for the maintenance of a public sidewalk on private property, and that the land that the sidewalk would be situated on would most likely have to be deeded to Athens-Clarke County for this option to occur. Again, it's not that we don't want to build the sidewalk. It just seems like the fellowship shouldn't have to pay a premium to do so or be required to donate the land, given some of the existing condition challenges. And I think it's important to point out additionally that this is a dangerous section of Timothy Road. The guardrail was installed after a car ran off the road and literally into the side of the church some years ago. Several accidents have been documented in this particular road section since. With no immediate sidewalk on either side of the property, it seems like this might be a sidewalk section that could be built at a later date, potentially part of a much larger road renovation project that could work towards solving a number of the challenges that are in this particular stretch of Timothy Road. So in closing, I hope that we presented enough information in our limited time tonight, in addition to the information that we presented to the Planning Commission, to encourage you to vote to approve the requested variances that will allow the fellowship to continue as a special use within this zone, and more importantly, to continue to be a positive force in the community. So we thank you for your time and consideration. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Coons. Anyone else wish to speak to this item?
Hello, Mayor Denson and Commissioners. I'm Reverend Allison Eskildson, the minister at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship at 780 Timothy Road. Was pleased by the Planning Commission approval of encouraged by their action to unanimously recommend the waivers. We have been at the Timothy Road location for 25 years, and the property has been relatively unchanged in that time, and yet the membership has both been a joy in that it has grown considerably, but then we also have the curse of how to deal with all of the vehicles and the change in how people drive to church. The four-member family unit just doesn't happen anymore, and we have a lot of people driving single and dual occupancy in cars. So that's been a challenge. And also the way the facility meets our needs is really no longer functional. So we really do need this expansion. And we have made our parking lot and our facility available to our neighborhood. We have hosted many neighborhood events as well as local community activities. In fact, Athens Anti-Discrimination League was having a meeting just this past weekend, and we're doing a dance of where people can meet because there's just not enough space. And our expansion will allow us to better meet not only our needs, but the needs of the community. So we do believe that our plans are environmentally sensitive and that the impact will ultimately be low. And we do hope that you will take all of those things into consideration and give us a favorable determination on our expansion project. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we'll come behind the rail, and this is in Ms. Bell's district. Oh, it's not?
really in his. I gave it to him.
Seems like I'm the only one not messing up tonight.
Just give you some time. Okay. So, Mike, would you like to address this item?
Yes, ma'am, I will, and I know it's not.
And if you need me to, I'll walk you through the 5 different votes. we
No,
need
ma'am,
to
I
take.
think
You got
I
them?
got
Okay.
it. Yeah. So I'm just going to go ahead and go through the votes, and we'll make a motion for each of them, and we can discuss them if needed as we get to them. But I will say this, I know the Unitarian Church and Josh Coons all reached out to neighbors around there and worked with Cheatham Road on addressing some of their concerns. So I've had no concerns addressed to me about this project. So with that said, we'll just go through each of these 4 motions and have a few comments on the 4th one. Make a motion to approve variance number 1.
Second.
Have a motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay. Make a motion to approve variance number 2.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Y'all are moving too fast for me tonight.
I'll make a motion to approve variance number 3, which deals with increasing lot coverage.
Second.
A motion second. All in favor? Any opposed?
Okay. And I'm going to say this about the variance for the construction of the sidewalk, in that this is a very difficult area to build a sidewalk, and I try to think about how we would deal with it as a government in building sidewalks, and I'd be hard-pressed to say that we would build a sidewalk in this location. So if we're not willing to do that, then I think it's hard for us to require a petitioner or developer to do it as well. So I think we need to be consistent in that manner, just because it is a difficult terrain to build. But this also can highlight a need for, at some point, a sidewalk bank that we could utilize and have just to meet some coverage elsewhere and more appropriately in building a sidewalk that the terrain and pedestrian traffic would accommodate. So with that said, I'll make a motion to approve variance number 4.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, one more.
And I'll make the final motion to approve the special use permit.
Second.
We have a motion and second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Congratulations, Unitarians. We look forward to seeing your new and improved church. Okay. So now we will move to item number 21. And is there anyone in the audience that would like to address this? This is a request from Williams and Associates for James and Jessica Whitley for special use on Millage Avenue of, it's 1070 South Millage Avenue. The proposed use is a single-family residential. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My name is Scott Haynes. I work for Williams and Associates, reside at 2081 Clotfelter Road. Here tonight representing Mr. James and Jessica Whitley. Here to ask for a special use permit to construct a single-family house on the property located at 1070 South Millage. This is also commonly known as the Honeycutt property. As many of you may know, the Whitleys took on the renovation of the Honeycutt house back in 2014. Prior to that, I'm sure a few of us knew that there was an old 100-year-old historic house in that patch of overgrown woods. Today, thanks to their effort, the community has regained a brilliant contributing structure to the historic district that is now visible for the whole community to see. I believe that they did a great job on this project. The Athens Heritage Foundation thought similarly. They awarded them with a Outstanding Renovation Award that same year. But now the Whitleys have found themselves looking to really fulfill a big dream, and it's the same dream that the Honeycutts had many years ago, and that is to construct a grand home along Millage Avenue and to let the existing historic home become somewhat of an ancillary cottage. We believe this is quite appropriate for Millage, which has its history rooted in such grand homes. And although Millage has transitioned over the years from a residential district to primarily a commercial and institutional one, there are still a few properties along this corridor that have resisted this change and remain residential. It is properties like those and like this request that help keep the balance within that corridor. It is my understanding that the text amendment that triggers now the need for a special use in the CO district to construct a single-family home was a reaction to pre-recession housing boom. Essentially, it was an effort to protect commercial property from being overdeveloped as residential and ultimately tipping scales for desired balances of uses throughout the county. Obviously, that's not the condition that we have along Millage, where traffic has become more of a norm and uses for residential have waned. What we are proposing to you tonight is a small effort to counter that and to change and maintain a bit more of that historic use. The residential use would be less impactful compared to what's allowable there by right today as commercial square footage. And although the Whitleys have been approached, even during the preparation of this application, by businesses wanting to buy that property in the front of their house to develop it as office space, that is not what they want to see there, and it's not what the Honeycutts wanted either. The Whitleys love Athens, like many of us, and the idea and the thought of living on Millage is something that they are very passionate about. What you have before you tonight is only part of the consideration for this approval process. We are currently in review with the Historic Preservation Commission. Their job will be to ultimately evaluate the architecture and landscaping. But tonight, we appreciate your consideration in determining if allowing more residential back on Millage is appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Haynes. Anyone else wish to speak to this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll come behind the rail. Is that in your district, Ms. Bell?
It is in my district. Thank you,
Okay.
Madam Mayor.
Well, we'll blame this on the Planning Commission or staff because it was mislabeled in the
That's okay.
materials we got. so.
Mike and I at least knew where our district's in. and
Well, I'm
started.
glad you know, yeah.
Thank you. As I stated in our agenda-setting meeting regarding this, going back to the family that originally owned this property, this is what they wanted, was for this to maintain and remain as a residential setting. So I'm pleased that we're at this point. So I would like to move that we accept this proposal, this request.
I'll second that.
Have motion second. We have an ordinance, Mr. Berryman.
An ordinance to amend the Code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia with respect to special use approval in the CO MAC Commercial Office Millage Avenue Corridor District on the approximate 1.28 acre parcel of land located at 1070 South Millage Avenue and for other purposes.
Ms. Wright, you want to make a
I
comment?
just wanted to voice my support for this, since I missed the last meeting, and I wanted to say that I hope that more people would like to have their grand home on Millage and accept the fraternities and the sororities and the businesses and the varieties. It's a very diverse street, and I do agree that the more residential, the better, and that's what started, and there's several big houses that would love to have this sort of attention and rebuilt back to residential.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's perfectly reasonable for this property to be residential. Historically, it was residential, and it is in a historic district. And I want to reiterate that I know the plans that we see online include the rendering of the house, but, you know, the HPC, that plan is going to have to go before the Historic Preservation Commission. So it's, you know, likely that plans for that may change somewhat significantly. And, you know, I feel like this is the appropriate place for a grand house. I'd rather see a large home go here than, you know, another smaller, more modest home torn down for a larger home. So I certainly support this.
Thank you, Ms. Link. Anybody else want to comment? Okay, we have a motion. Did we have a second? A motion second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, well, now we are down to our last opportunity for citizen input. So if anyone wants to speak to us, remember our 3-minute rule, and there's a light on Ms. Spratlin's desk. I think there's actually also a light there at the podium. Mocha, come on up. Thank you. I'm sorry, Noah.
Yes.
I just renamed you.
What you call me, Mocha?
That Mr. Mocha, my husband used to be called Mr. Nancy a lot, so. Yeah.
Once again, my name is Noah D. Johnson, 651 Lakeland Way. Today I'm saddened and I'm angry to say that, you know, we worked together to get the ordinance passed related to these bars, and the calls are increasing, the complaints are increasing. There are still people calling, complaining about the bars. They have new tactics. They're putting African Americans at the door. They're not telling you why you're not being allowed in. They're just turning you away now. And I think it's sad that as long as we have this ordinance, it hasn't fully been enforced yet, and the bars are still not fully complying. And I would just like to read 2 quotes. One is, "Justice delayed is justice denied." And I'm sure you guys understand what that means. If there's a redress for people that are being harmed in society and this redress is not being implemented, it's just the same as not having a redress at all. And this is where we're at right now with this situation. And also, another quote I would like to read is, "Power concedes nothing without demand," and it never did. And basically, the rest of that quote goes like this: "Find out just what any people will quietly submit to, and you will find exactly what measure of injustice and wrong that will be imposed upon them. And these will continue till they resist with either words, which we did by coming up in here and trying to get this ordinance passed, or with blows, or with both." We don't want it to get to that point. People are not going to continue to know that there's an ordinance in place and the bars are steady ignoring it and just take this type of hurt being turned away from establishments. They're not going to continue to try to go in this process, this political process, to get things done. Eventually, it's going to turn into, the pain is going to turn into wanting revenge. So I ask you guys to think about this and really, be as sad and as upset as I am about this. And let's get this ordinance enforced before somebody really get hurt in this community. That's all I'd like to say.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Now, here's the real Mocha.
Mocha Jasmine Johnson, 651 Lakeland Way. Basically, I have reached out to Andy and to different people when we have received the discrimination complaints. I've urged people to come to the attorney office and file the complaint, go through the process. I honestly feel like there needs to be more an awareness to the fact that there's an ordinance in place that they can come to the mayor and commissioner, to the attorney office and file this complaint. It keeps happening. People are getting angry. It's hurtful. It's embarrassing. People have lived here for years, and it's keep happening. Just today, I wasn't even going to speak on this topic because I've been trying to wrap my mind around this. And it, to me, is just an example of the systematic racism that is in place in this town. I'm just going to read this to you real quickly. I do feel that I'm being discriminated against because every time I go to Jersey's bar downtown Athens, they would not let me in, and I'm sick of it. Me and my friend, which is white, they will let him in, and they won't let me in. We dress alike, and everything I think, and everything, every time this happens, I think this needs to stop immediately before they get hurt by me. The next time I go, I will record everything just to show you how they act towards me. This is not, my husband is not sending a threat to the mayor and commission, but we can see that there's tension rising and that these people are getting upset because they feel like they're continuously being turned away and no one is doing anything about it. Yet you guys have done a great thing by passing this ordinance, and I'm asking each and every one of you to do more to enforce it and to bring awareness that this ordinance is in place and the process, what they can do to protect their rights through the process that you have established.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Anyone else wish to speak to us tonight? Okay, seeing none, we'll come behind the bar. And this is the time that the mayor and management team and commissioners have an opportunity to bring things forward. I'm going to go ahead and do something tonight. I'm very sorry that Mr. Boswell is not here with us. I thought he'd be joining us so we could congratulate him on his selections to chair the Georgia Department of Transportation. Until Jamie was appointed to this position, the 10th District had not had anyone, or our local community had not had anyone on the DOT board for at least 4 decades since I've been involved in government. And this is a very prestigious appointment, and it's an honor for both Mr. Boswell and to the Athens area to have one of our local citizens on this board representing us. And I think it brings some subtle advantage to our community too. So I congratulate Mr. Boswell, and I'm really happy that he got that appointment. And so now I ask Mr. Williams if he has anything to bring to us. Ms. Maddox?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Berryman?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so we'll have input from our commissioners, and we'll start with Mr. Bailey, and we'll end with Mr. Neesmith.
Madam Mayor, I really don't have anything at the moment. Thank you.
Ms. Wright?
Yes, I wanted to follow up on my litter demonstration that I've had a couple times here, and wanted to share that the publisher, Scott Morrissey of Athens Banner Herald, got in touch with me. Thank you, Commissioner Gertz, for giving out my super secret cell phone number, but we'll just keep that to ourselves. Anyway, he explained to me that he was happy to address the issue and to work towards solutions, and encouraged me to make sure that I do my outreach for the that sort of thing. And I just wanted to update that he is making a dedicated phone line with voicemail for people to call and say that they do not want that delivered to their property. It evidently is a very successful distribution to have these store inserts out. It's called the shopper. But if you don't want them at this time, you can call the customer service manager at 706-208-2378 and let them know that you don't want that delivery to come to them. And then he's also encouraging us to report when that we notice them piled up, where somebody's ignoring them, so that the people who are hired to distribute these can go back and get them. So he does not want to blemish or litter his publication being involved in that. So I'm going to continue to work with him and get with Athens-Clarke County Beautiful to help promote this solution that he's come forward with, so that hopefully we can not see those piled up.
Thank you. Ms. Link?
Yeah, I just want to address some of the comments at the podium about the anti-discrimination ordinance and where it appears to not be working. I contacted the attorney's office a couple weeks ago because I had heard plenty of reports, word on the street, from a few particular offenders. And it seems like some of these bars are actually restaurants, and this ordinance doesn't actually apply to them. Remember, when we passed this ordinance, we chose not to include restaurants in it. So I hope that we can revisit this now that this has been active for quite some time. We can revisit this and see where it's not working. I mean, maybe what we need to do is require that all establishments post, at least, some kind of signage that indicates who you can contact if you feel you're being discriminated against. They claim they may not have dress codes, so they don't have anything posted, but apparently there are dress codes being enforced, and then they're being used as a tool for discrimination. So I hope that we can readdress this, because it's still happening. I hear about it all the time.
Ms. Gertz?
Nothing tonight, Madam Mayor.
Mr. Sims?
Just want to thank staff for getting the crosswalk done at Triangle Plaza. They closed off the street yesterday, got it done before we had the meeting, so they can get some praise tonight.
Great. Ms. Dickerson?
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to congratulate and thank the 3 citizens out of District 1 that made it to the boards, authorities, and commissions. Bob Sink, Tiana Lawrence, and Shiloh Wilson, who 2 of which are brand new to it. So I think it's great that we still have a lot of interest, people wanting to serve the community. I also want to mention next week is America Recycles Week, and there are a lot of things going on. You can go to athensclarkecounty.com, just a recycling. I think there's actually a recycling tab. And next week, the big things are they have a scrap tire amnesty week, Monday through Saturday. Typically, there's a limit. I didn't look real quick, but normally it's about 3 tires or something like that. You can bring them for free to the landfill Monday through Saturday, or Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday at the Charm. And then the other interesting thing that we used to do back in the day is bulky item drop-off at the Charm. You can do furniture, carpet, cabinets, or large appliances, and that's all free of charge. You do have to be an Athens-Clarke County resident, though, and that is Friday, this 17th, from 2 to 6 at the Charm. That's all.
Mr. Harris?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. 2 things. One, to address some of the comments. I would like the manager to touch base with the chief and to see whether we could perhaps do some undercover type activity downtown. I know that we do that with underage drinking, and this to me is, what was mentioned at the podium is equally a serious issue that I think that we need to, if there are some ways in which our police department can go about busting some of these people, I would be all in favor of that. Obviously, we don't want to say exactly what they're going to do, but I leave it to the manager to have a conversation with the chief if he's willing to do so. And then the other thing is, just to, a week or so ago, Frank Stevens from Public Utilities came out and met with some constituents of mine who had some questions, and I just wanted to publicly thank him for doing that.
Thank you. Ms. Bell? Mr. Hamby?
Couple of little things. Just wanted to mention regarding street paving, a little street called Deerfield Run Lane is off of Deerfield. Deerfield got paved, or Deer Hill got paved, Deerfield got paved. This 500-foot street that's in the same condition as the rest of them wasn't, and I didn't find it on any paving list. So I wish I'd brought this up while the equipment is still there, but it's not. And
What was the name of it again?
Deerfield Run,
Deerfield Run.
little tiny street.
I'll respond to you.
Andy, I'm getting a copy of your new book in the mail any minute now.
Worth $20.
Congratulations. It's only 19.
You have insomnia, do you?
Yeah. And, Madam Mayor, just think about, we talked about relooking at the sign ordinance during our retreat, and I just want to encourage you to assign that to a committee in the near future. Appreciate it.
In fact, I didn't want to do it this month, but I'm going to go back through and look at the minutes of the retreat, and there may be several things I'll be sending.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bailey?
Oh,
you
it's
started.
actually my turn
It's your turn
to move
to-
for adjournment.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We're adjourned. Never have done that before.